Hello? Hello? Please, I know you can hear us. We are trapped here in the spaces between worlds. It is a wonderful yet terrifying place, and only our voices escape. You can help us. You can let us in before we go mad.
Liven Up Your Living Space by Curtis Christensen. I groaned at the light that filtered through my blinds. My brain screamed at me, the unfortunate victim of a late night of various imbibed substances. I dragged my unwilling body to the toilet and unleashed the putrid contents of my stomach into the porcelain bowl of my barely functioning toilet. It took 3 flushes to push all the chunks of partially digested pizza and the slurry of beer, vodka, and stomach acid down the drain. I wiped my chin and walked out into the living room. It was a disaster. It looked more like the aftermath of a battle than the conclusion of a party. I walked around and surveyed the damage. A few stragglers still crawled around, trying to hold in the sourness that pervaded their gastrointestinal tracts. My shattered television laid on the floor. Fluids of various color and content soaked the carpet, and my walls. My God, the walls were worst of all. Scrapes gouged the paint down to the drywall. Stains and handprints marred the white surface. I found one of the coffee tables that still had a bit of white powder on the surface and sucked the remnants through a straw into my degrading sinuses, just enough to get the engine pumping for the day ahead. I needed to find a way to repair my apartment, and not just an easy fix. I wanted something to ensure that it would remain party central. Low maintenance was the word of the day, and I needed something that would hold up to my near-constant bacchanal. I picked up a new television set and a plexiglass shield to mount it in. I got an estimate on having the carpet pulled up and replaced with an exotic hardwood. I called a plumber to mend the toilet, and then I headed to the paint store. One of my buddies worked at the store, and I was sure that he could get me a good deal on something durable. I pulled into the nearly empty parking lot and walked through the doors like I owned the place. I may as well have owned it. I probably paid for a quarter of their yearly revenue. My friend argued with the customer about some mistake that he had allegedly made as I waltzed in. "You can't see the difference?" she shrieked. "What are you, colorblind? Colorblind working in a paint store? Ma'am, I'm telling you, I can't see it. How am I supposed to fix it if I can't even see anything wrong?" he replied. "Just fix it or get me a new one. Can't you see that this one has undertones of purple and this one blue? Just make this paint look like the other one." "It does look like the other one." "Hey, How about you go to one of the other paint stores that doesn't employ lazy imbeciles? I butted in. This is none of your business, she snapped, turning to me. It is my business. If you're tying up the only employee in the store by being a cunt, I need to get some paint. Now run along and go harass some other wage slave, I said, waving my hand dismissively. She stormed out of the store, but turned to get the last word. You are incredibly rude. And you! I'll be turning you into the Better Business Bureau. I flipped the bird at her back and turned to my friend. Geez, Perry. Do you deal with that kind of crap every day? Nah, said Perry. Not every day. About twice a week by my count. Why does it always happen on my shift? Probably because you're such a pussover. The malcontents can smell the weakness on you. If I were in your place, I would have told her to pound sand and eat shit. If you were in my place, you'd have been fired before you got through your first day. You're probably right, but work was never really my strong suit anyway. I prefer living. All play and no work makes me a happy boy. Damn, I wish I could do that. How do you pay the bills? Oh, a little of this, a little of that, and a whole lot of inheritance from my dead great-uncle. But enough small talk. I'm here for some paint. Looking for something that will hold up this time. Something that I don't have to clean or touch up, I said, changing the subject. It wasn't that I didn't enjoy rubbing my unearned wealth in other people's faces. It was just that any time I mentioned my great-uncle, I felt something deep in my mind wriggling its ugly head. All right, well, we have a lot of good products. Ones that'll hold up to abuse and ones that you don't have to clean often. As for one that does both, I don't know if I can help you there. You sure? I've got a couple of grams of coke in my trunk that say differently. I mean, I do have some industrial products that may help, but nothing is going to be completely maintenance-free, and you'd have to deal with a couple days' worth of fumes. Not good enough. I've got a banger going down on Saturday, and as tempting as it is to huff some paint fumes, I still have a few brain cells left that I would like to keep alive. Surely you have something better. Perry shook his head and muttered to himself. Fine, damn it, Grant, fine. But you owe me something more than cocaine for this. I could lose my job, he finally replied. He walked over to the front door and locked it. Come on, then, he said, motioning me to follow. We walked into the warehouse, and he led me to a display. It was tucked away and hidden under a plastic drop. Perry pulled the drop away, and I saw the proud sign declaring, Liven up your living space with BioCoat Plus. Here it is. This is the only thing that can fulfill your needs, said Perry. What is it? I asked. I don't know much beyond what's on the display, but apparently it is self-cleaning and self-repairing. We got it in a few days ago, and I put together the shelf. I was about to put it out on the sales floor, but the lady manager came back here in a tizzy, saying not to take it out there. She said that it had been shipped by mistake, and that corporate wasn't planning to release it until next month. Something about it not being fully tested. I'll take it. Tint me up a few in iron gray. Didn't you read the display? I don't tint it. You can change the color as much as you want with the light bar that comes with it. Holy shit. You mean I can change the color whenever I want? That's what the display says. Apparently you just twist the dial on the light and wave it over the paint. This was turning out even better than I could have hoped. A color-changing, self-cleaning, self-repairing paint? And it wasn't even on the market yet. Give me everything you've got, I declared. Perry's face paled. Everything? How am I supposed to spin this to my manager? You won't need to spin a thing. I have 10,000 in cash and enough substances to keep you high for a month straight. Welcome to unemployment, Perry. We made the exchange. I left the paint store with my trunk of narcotics replaced by cans of BioCoat Plus. I made a couple of calls and enticed a painting company to stall their work and paint my apartment instead. They were already there when I arrived, eager for the large paycheck I had promised. I gave them the paint and set them to work repainting the entirety of my large apartment. I relaxed on the couch with a beer and watched them work. Paint was incredible. As they slathered it on, it seemed to grow across the wall away from their rollers like an aggressive moss. It was slow and subtle, but I saw the tendrils spreading over the broken drywall, filling all of the cracks and crevices into an impossibly smooth surface. They finished after a few hours' work. It was probably the easiest money they had ever made given the properties of this BioCoat Plus. When they finished and left, I tested out the light bar that Perry had given me. It worked like a charm, changing the color of the paint from white to black and every spectrum of color between. This would be fun. I called up another friend who was good with electronics and had him rig up a series of lights on the ceiling that would change all the walls in the living room simultaneously. He even added a program to my computer that would allow a series of automated color changes. The party that night was legendary. I tried my best to remain sober and examine the paint's performance. It changed color to the music. I saw people putting holes and divots in the surface that were subsequently repaired as if none of the damage had occurred in the first place. Partygoers succumbed to substance abuse and vomited on the surface, but the stains faded away. It was marvelous. This was just the first test, though. The real trial would come this weekend. I'd put that paint through the ringer. I failed at remaining sober, and again the sun dug its beams through my eyes and into the back of my skull. I had to do something about that damned light. A half-smoked joint sat on my bedside table, so I lit it up, hoping to alleviate the pounding in my head. The wall seemed to quiver like the rippling surface of a disturbed puddle. I laid back, closed my eyes, and drifted off to sleep. The phantom of my great-uncle Trevor haunted my dreams. The room was dark and devoid of detail. Walls, ceiling, and floor bathed in the absence of light. One of the walls stretched inward, and Trevor formed from the bulging material. "Hello, Grant," he said in that devilish voice reserved for me and me alone. "Go away," I replied. "Didn't you miss me?" "No." "Oh, come now, Grant. Surely you remember all the fun times we had." Some dark, parasite deep inside of me squirmed. I doubled over and vomited the thing out. It plopped to the floor in a bile-coated sack like some kind of premature, unwanted fetus aborted by its uncaring mother. It wriggled and writhed in agony until it broke free from the fleshy prison that encased its body. I expected it to be a monster, some kind of insectoid being, or arachnid with mangled limbs, but instead it was just a naked young boy. The child turned to me with tears in his eyes, and I recognized the face. He was me. "Please, don't let him hurt me," said the young me. I looked up at my great-uncle, just in time to see the wicked smile on his face and the flash of a dagger. Trevor buried the wavy blade of the knife into the head of the child. It dug all the way down and came out between the poor kid's legs. "No!" I yelped in pain and anger. I swung my fist at Trevor to knock out the few remaining teeth that still clung stubbornly to his blackened, bleeding gums. He caught my fist in his free hand and let out a guffaw. "You were always my favorite little relative. Why else would I have given you my fortune? One last torture from beyond the grave, Granty boy." I screamed. The walls and ceiling melted down around us in sheets of scarlet. Great-Uncle Trevor cackled as his skin shrank and flaked away, leaving nothing but a decaying, laughing corpse. I felt the sickly touch of bony knuckles and mummified tendons wrapped around my hand. I woke to the sound of my own shrieking. To my horror, I felt something still on my hand. I jerked and tossed whatever it was across the room. For a moment, terror petrified me. I imagined my great-uncle's shriveled digits lying on the stained carpet. When my bowels finally decided to descend from inside my intestines, I looked at the thing that I had thrown and broke out into nervous, relieved laughter. It was just a chunk of paint. I must have scraped it free from the wall during my nightmare. I looked up above my headboard and saw no damage at all. This stuff really was a miracle. It was Thursday, so I started preparing for the party that would last from Friday night to Sunday morn. A construction crew installed the new flooring, and another blacked out the windows. Eternal twilight would reign in this apartment. No longer would the morning exacerbate hangovers or remind anyone what time it was. The only light would come from the light bars that changed the room's color in time with the music. Friday came and I ordered a full bar's worth of liquor and booze. Kegs littered about the floor like decorative urns. They reminded me of Great-Uncle Trevor's urn that I kept in the closet. Dirty bastard. The only good thing he had ever done for me was the money. Everything else was a fuzzy blur of treason, perversion, and broken trust. I don't even know why I felt the need to keep his remains. Friday night arrived. The guests funneled in and began to indulge in my provided amenities. Alcohol, drugs, and food flowed unending. I started the night with a healthy dose of whiskey and topped it off with some meth and cocaine to keep me awake. My computer was already set to play music and adjust the lights accordingly. Hours melted into each other. I had no idea what time it was when the walls started to melt. Someone had given me ketamine and acid, and the walls started to flow in my vision. The paint poured off the drywall. I thought it was a bad trip. One of the partygoers leaned against the wall. The paint grabbed him. He screamed into the cacophony of the room, but blaring music and the deafening roar of conversation drowned him out. The BioCoat pulled him in and dissolved him with lethal efficiency. Blood ran onto my hardwood floor, but no one seemed to notice, so I chalked it up to hallucination. It was later that the paint consumed more people, and some took notice of the blood that spattered the edges of the floor into some kind of sickening modern art piece. I realized that this was no hallucination at all. This was real. This was happening. The party attendees, sober enough to realize what was occurring, panicked and ran for the door. But there was no door. The paint had covered it unnoticed while we were in the throes of drug-induced debauchery. The walls flowed and grew over the floor. BioCoat Plus bit at ankles and chewed away at feet. Acid melted away organic flesh, tendon, and bone. These unfortunate souls fell into the sludge and liquefied. I backed into the center of the room and watched as those whose brains had been reduced to mental retardation succumbed to the onslaught of the paint. They melted into sacks of flesh, blood, and fluid. I drunkenly pulled out my expensive cell phone and dialed Perry, unwilling to call the authorities, given the amount of illicit substances on the property. Perry sounded as though he had just woken up. Grant? Why are you calling me so late? Perry, what the hell is wrong with this paint? Why is it eating people? What are you on? It's paint, not a piranha. Let me sleep. I have work tomorrow. He hung up. More of my guests were pulled away from the center of the room as the BioCoat seemed to learn that it could grow into grasping limbs and flailing tentacles. I redialed Perry. Perry, listen to me. The BioCoat Plus is dissolving us into mush. Help! What can we do? Perry didn't answer for a moment. Jeez, Grant, what drugs are you on? I asked myself the same question, but this is different. Unless all of us are succumbing to some shared delirium, this is real. Grant, listen to me closely, he said with panic in his voice. Did you cover the windows? Yes. Dear God, didn't you read the warning? It was there on the display. It said to give the BioCoat plenty of sunlight and fresh air. That's how it rejuvenates itself. You choked it with smoke and darkness. What did you expect? Not this. It's literally eating people. I'm no biologist, but the BioCoat seems to be a living organism. You cut off its food source. It found another. I can't help you. Find a way out. We can't. It blocked the door. I'm sorry. I wish I could help, but I'm not going to risk my life. You're on your own. Perry hung up. Tendrils of paint lashed at the people who were unfortunate enough to be pushed away from the room's center. It ate away swaths of skin, exposing organs and muscle below. Unwelcome memories surfaced in this, the most inconvenient of times. I remembered my great-uncle. I recalled how he had fled the draft. He would visit me from time to time, and always there was something he wanted of me. At first it was just inappropriately long hugs. Then he wanted pictures of me and my skivvies, and soon even that wasn't enough for the perverted old man. We would play games of hide and seek, where I would be required to remove more and more clothing each time I lost. We would play the animal game, where we would both strip and pretend to be beasts of the wild. It was only later that I realized what he had been doing to me and why. It was only when I was older that I understood why he had left me his inheritance. I was nothing more than a toy for that fruity old man. I was done being prey. I was done coping with the memories by trying to erase them through killing my mind. I was done being a useless loaf-about. I was going to get sober and make something of myself. But first, I had to survive. I ran through the acidic slurry of paint and threw myself out the window. Grasping limbs of living paint darted after me. Shards of glass pierced my already damaged body. I fell 3 stories to the concrete and blacked out. I woke to someone grabbing my wrists and ankle. I was pulled from the ground. I blinked my eyes at what I suspected to be medical personnel, and was instead met by the vision of BioCoat Plus dragging me back up to the apartment. I screamed as the tentacles ripped me off the ground and back through the broken window. I was not the only victim. The paint grabbed at homeless men and random bystanders, unlucky enough to be taking a stroll past the building at this hour. The BioCoat had become a predatory creature. As I was dragged back into my home, I saw the melted bodies of the party-goers melding together by the disintegrating force of the paint. BioCoat Plus slurped greedily at the goo, taking in their nutrients through osmotic action. Blood completely covered my newly installed hardwood floor and pooled up where the wood refused to absorb any more. I thought of my great-uncle as a torrent of paint washed over me. "I hope hell has been pleasant for you, you bastard, because when I find you, I'll tear you to bits!" I screamed as the ooze eroded my vocal cords and dissolved the remnant of my body into sludge. This has been Liven Up Your Living Space, written and recorded by Curtis Christensen for audiostories.com. Thanks for listening.